Dave, where do you sit in this conversation when it comes to John Klingberg? It sounds like he's going to be a healthy scratch tonight.
Well, first of all, I think he's hurt. That's what Sheldon Keefe mentioned. He's got some injuries that he's battling, so that's why he's out. Jake McCabe is in.
Is that one of those? You watching my screen? Is it one of those?
I see it. Maybe it could be. But Keefe tried to get out of it, like right out of the gate. Just be like, listen, we're making this change, and just a heads up, he's hurt. He's battling some stuff. So they have the luxury, I guess, of putting somebody else in. But does everybody understand what type of player John Klingberg is? I get that everybody's all over him, you guys were just saying it. They're all over his ass right now, so you could say that.
You can.
But he's an offensive-minded defenseman. He always has been. If you want him to play responsibly defensively, well, then don't trade for him, don't sign him. He's not that caliber player. He was brought in to help spread out the offense from the point out, to help out the power play. If you're expecting him to do anything else, you're going to be disappointed, because that's not what he brings to the table. Now, was he a little bit more well-rounded a number of years ago when he was with Dallas? A little bit. But you have to take him for what he is. And the other elements of this team, they don't have the assets to combat the fact that you're going to have defensive deficiencies when John Klingberg is on the ice. So you mentioned Gustafsson. Well, similar situation. The run that the Canadians were on when they had him, he was a defensive liability, but he was brought out there to be offensive in certain moments of the game. So if you can compensate that by bringing in somebody sound on the back end that can play with him, then that's effectively the move you'd like to make. But if you're trying to expect John Klingberg to play a well-rounded defensive game, that's just not his style.
Majority of Twitter Nation and Leafs Nation is trying to get rid of him. Whatever. Yeah. Is it possible to move on from this contract, or that's something that they're stuck with? And again, I don't think the minors is an issue. Is an opportunity for him, but do you see them potentially trading him down the line?
Honestly, no, because I don't see somebody taking on the money right now. Like, John Klingberg turned down a boatload of money from the Dallas Stars before he, effectively wanted out and changed agents and all that stuff. It was his decision. It wasn't representation. It was his decision to turn down a big mega contract. I don't remember the exact number, but it was a significant offer by the Dallas Stars. He turned it down. He thought he would get more on the open market, and here he is right now. But look, for $4 million or whatever he's making, from an offensive side of things, I think that's market value if you're expecting him to be like a 40-point guy from the back end. But again, you have to understand what you're dealing with. And if the Leafs want to go out and get a Chris Tanev or a Nikita Zadorov, who's a left shot but plays both sides, and they'll have an opportunity to look at both of these guys tonight with the Flames firsthand, you're going to have to move out some other roster pieces in order to make that work. Or you're going to have to be really creative, compensate another team in order to take on either a roster player or retain some salary. So this is going to take Treliving a little bit of MacGyvering in order to pull off the addition of somebody sound on that back end. Maybe it's, you look at somebody who's a little bit more financially responsible. Maybe it's a Sean Walker in Philadelphia, for example, later on in the season. But we'll have to wait and see. They're doing due diligence work now in terms of seeing what the options are. But it doesn't sound like they're going to be pulling the trigger on anything anytime soon.
Well, look, I'm going to call BS on this. It's like telling me Matt Murray's hurt, okay? And I understand, what happens when you assume, but let's call a spade here. John Klingberg's played like ass. We don't want him in the lineup. He's hurt. Might put him on LTIR for a couple of weeks, if you know what I'm saying. But that's just my opinion, just speculation on my part. I want to get your guys' thoughts on Ryan Reaves. And Stewie, we can start to you, then to DP. Do they have a Ryan Reaves problem? Do they have to do something imminently? Can they do something imminently? Like, would you put this guy in the minors, Stewie?
And this is the one part where I don't think people really think about or even care is the respect factor, right? He's sitting there on July 1st. They didn't settle on him. They went out and recruited him, right? So that's a bad piece of business, saying, hey, you know what? You guys have to do your SWOT analysis and see the strengths and weaknesses of this player, and saying, hey, you know what? He is at a certain age, but you came in and you committed to him for 3 years. So if you go now and put him in the minors, or you start messing around with his ice time and setting him down, that's a bad piece of business, right? And that sort of was the MO of the Maple Leafs back then. Guys, the peers of mine were like, yeah, I'm not coming to sign in Toronto. They'll bury my contract on the way to burying 5 other ones. So I'm not signing here. So I think for them, they have to find a way to have him work within their system. And I think the one thing we can say is that fourth line doesn't have any chemistry. What is their identity, right? You have the high flyer and Gregor, he's going up and down. So for me, I think for them, it's just getting the line in, going over video, saying, this is what we need from you guys. There's too much gray area in their game. I think they're not being utilized at a certain point. They're being thrown out there at random times. But I think, again, and Reaves knows this, he understands he has to be better. Again, he's a personal friend of mine. I've had conversations with him. He understands that. But again, this market, again, we talked about the Boston Bruins. I don't know who their fourth line is, because on the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. But yes, they've caught in some dashes. They got to be better defensively. He understands that. But now 10 games into the season, or 12 games, saying, yeah, you know what, we're getting out of this contract, that's a bad piece of business.
Yeah,
Dave?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see a scenario where that's realistic at this point, for a number of reasons, including what Stewie just mentioned. I mean, it's like you sign somebody and then you either waive them or flip them, a month into the season. It's not a good look. Players talk a lot. It's just a little bit. That's not a good look. It's about finding the right pieces here, and this is up and down the lineup. Like, Keefe's been juggling some lines, trying to find out who's going to play alongside Matthews and Marner. Now it seems to be Nyes. Are you going to give them a chance? Are you going to give them a stretch to see if that works? Does Bert look better with Tavares and Nylander? You've got to give them a little bit of a stretch here to see how that works. Then, if that's the case, then you've got to modify your bottom six and see where some of these guys fit in. And it may simply be situational. Like Reaves, he may be in a position, depending on where the game is at, to be playing alongside a guy like Max Domi, for example. Or again, it's all situational when it comes to the bottom six, especially with the fourth line, with the pieces that you have on it. And he's going to, some nights he'll play 8 minutes, some nights he'll get 11, some nights he'll get 6. I think from Toronto's perspective, to have this type of player in the lineup, it's going to depend on where a game is at, how the team's performing overall, and what type of energy do you need at certain moments of the game. And the importance of bringing Reaves in wasn't just to add that physicality and intimidation on the ice. It's for what he brings to a team in a locker room off of the ice. This is a glue guy, and those guys are very, very valuable, and become more valuable as the season progresses, when you've got that chemistry and that off-ice rapport that really helps teams, especially ones that are looking to make some damage and do some damage as the season moves along.
Yeah, something tells me the analytics nerds will be hitting you up on X in the next 2.5 seconds here, 2.5 per 60 here on Twitter. What's fascinating? Like, it seems to be really, really loud, and it seems like a sneaky big weekend. Not because you're going to be here on the back-to-back here, Dave, and I get that. King Street West, better watch out. But more so, like, where this
Good
team
times.
is, and then they're like pre-Global Series trip to Sweden, right?
Yeah, and this is an opportunity for, I just mentioned the off-ice stuff. This is an opportunity for them to get out some, some extra team building, team chemistry. The bulk of this team has been intact, and the core has obviously been intact for a little while. But just to go out on a trip over to Sweden, over to Stockholm, I've been there a number of times. I would have been on this trip actually now if we didn't have, we have some stuff we're doing in Boston with you guys will see it later on. But
okay, fine. Don't tell us. Okay.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know if I can, but anyway, I can't. I couldn't go to Sweden, but those are opportunities. I've traveled with teams. I actually traveled with Columbus way back in the day. They went over. There were some team building experiences. They went to the horse track. Christian Azelius at the time owned some horses and brought everybody in there. It was a nice experience and a nice opportunity for everybody to kind of come together and let go of some of the early season stress. And from Toronto's perspective, with the way they're playing at home, with the way the media has been consistently, with the way that fans are grinding on them, yelling middle of the game to wake up, and you could hear it because it's a pin drop in there sometimes.
Sometimes.
This is a good. I'm trying to be nice. This is a good chance for the team to get some off ice team building going, and hopefully for their sake, if they come away with 3 or 4 points in those couple of games overseas, come back here, feel a little bit differently. Maybe this helps push them forward a little bit more, and maybe adds that chemistry off ice, adds to the on ice success.
I got a question for both you guys here. What are the odds we see Nylander coming back with an $88 million contract? How perfect would that scenario be, him signing in Sweden?
I like that.
Hey, that'd be good.
It's not 88. It'll be closer to 80. Yeah.
Not if he keeps this up. Not if he keeps this up, Stewie. Like if this guy keeps rolling here and he has another 90+ point season, and they don't have him signed, and he's he rifles off 40 again, I think the number goes up to 12 per year. Ooh. To be honest with you, the way that he's performing, he wants to stay. It's just a matter of the dollars. But hey, 8 years, $88 million. The way he's playing right now, that it would be a nice little touch to get that done at home. He can ride the, I don't know what it's called over there in Stockholm, but he can sign the papers
there,
on.
I think, no?
It might think something like that, yeah. Or they can just go to the Rose Club and get all the documents signed there too. That works.
The thing I remember about Stockholm, when you get into the airport there, they have like an escalator, dude. It's like a 90-degree jump down. Remember that? Like, and it goes on forever, and you're looking and like, is this thing going to end? Like, I want to pack a dip. I want to go buy some snooze. Like, there's conversations being had. It's like 10 minutes later, you're finally off this thing.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different. If you have Stockholm, for me, it's one of my favorite cities that I've ever been to. It's phenomenal. It's gorgeous. The bars are great. People speak English there, so that helps. Yeah. It's I think a lot of the teams will be heading over to Rose Club, probably heading over to Richie's, get a nice bite to eat. A lot of good options there.
You're a professional marketer, man, by trade. I love that. Like, anywhere in the world, just tell me where to go. But I wanted to ask you too, like the deadline. I know it's far away, but like, do you have a sense? Like, we know they're looking for a defenseman. We talked about Calgary. Maybe a Columbus conversation can be had. I know they're trying to get rid of somebody there. You mentioned, Philadelphia. In general, like, what are they trying to look for here over the next couple months, I guess?
Again, I think just because of their salary cap situation, a lot of this is going to be information collecting and seeing if there's an opportunity to make some moves down the road that fit the cap, and can you get a third body in there? We know that Montreal, Philadelphia, Anaheim, San Jose, those are 4 teams that are looking and willing to add and retain money. Not necessarily retain on a contract, but take on a contract as opposed to actual retention. So they're going to have some options to do that. A couple of weeks ago, they were actually looking around just to see where the market was going to play out in terms of getting an affordable winger to potentially add to their top 6. But now it sounds like they want to see how Nyes does, and does the Bertuzzi mesh well on line 2. That may deviate their plan a little bit and maybe look to somebody in that bottom 6 affordable guy. But in those last 2 weeks, the focus has also shifted to the blue line. I mentioned Walker in Philadelphia. He's a pending UFA. He'll be a free agent in the summer. The dollar's a little less. It's under $3 million. I think it's around the 2.6 range. So you could possibly work something out there. It's not as big of a hit for another team to take on money. And I don't know if Philly wants to retain on another contract, at least on Walker's side, maybe in a different direction. So they're going to look. They're going to look to see what their options are and see what ultimately becomes available. Some teams that they're talking to are probably right now anyway in that middle class, middle of the pack. Maybe if things go well, they can continue to compete for a wild card spot, but it's early, right? 12, 13 games into the season. So this is just information collecting at this point. Unless something falls into their lap, you're probably looking at something January, February on before they actually pull the trigger on anything that's relatively substantial. Again, unless just somebody calls and says, to hell with this, let's just make this happen now.
Joseph Woll and Samsonov, do you see them continuing to be a 1A, 1B option, or do you see it going forward being Woll's crease to lose?
If he keeps it up, Stewie, I can't see a scenario where they're going to start platooning or continue to platoon guys. I think it's going to be, we need somebody to ride so we can focus on other elements of our game. And as you know, like if your goaltender is hot and doing well, that's a nice little confidence booster for you as well. You don't have to worry as much as you would defensively, because you know your guy has your back here. So I think they just want to have a level of continuity and consistency in net. And if it's Wall, and so far he's proven to be the guy, then you roll with him. You give him a strong stretch, see if he can continue that, and then you get Samsonov in there every once in a while. I thought that Samsonov was going to come out this season and kind of claim that crease. Hasn't happened. So I think Wall is taking advantage of his situation, and good for him, as he should.
Dave, what's your sense, lastly, on Sheldon Keefe? What kind of leash do they have on him? Is Guy Boucher going to be in the conversation if that convo has to be had with Keefe? Are there other names that could be potential targets? Like, I don't know. I'm sort of in the middle area when it comes to Sheldon Keefe. I know people love to point fingers in this market and say, hey, it's the coach's fault. It's the easiest scapegoat in the game to me.
It is. Yeah. I mean, everybody's look at Edmonton. It's the coach's fault. It's the coach's fault. Well, in that situation, no, it's the GM's fault. Look at that roster.
True.
Look at the team. Here, I think, look, I wrote about this the other day. I think anything less than a conference final appearance for the Toronto Maple Leafs is going to be a failure, at least viewed internally within that organization. So you have to look. There's no more excuses. The roster that's compiled right now and the core that's here is probably your strongest group since those early 2000s, when the team was just kind of rolling there. So anything you can to keep this team moving forward is what Treliving and Shanny and the rest of the staff are going to have to focus on, and is their focus. So if they start to falter, then I could see a greater argument to make a change behind the bench. I don't see that now, and I'm not personally the biggest fan of some of the system and structure that's in place here. But I don't throw this right now on the coaching staff. A lot of the players are still trying to find themselves. Again, you added some pieces. You're trying to juggle things up. We just need a level of consistency here. And if we go through another 10-game stretch and you're still moving pieces around and whatnot, that's one of two things. Either you're not giving the guys enough leeway, or these just aren't the right pieces that are fitting. And then ultimately it's management's decision as to how to fix that thing right now.